The fan question this week deals with women's wrestling in high school and college. And it's a fan question that comes from Zachary Schneiderman, who asks, do you think that with the rise of female wrestling that more programs will start to have college wrestling, especially if female wrestling becomes a female NCAA sport? So thank you, Zach, for that question. And please make sure, before I get on to this topic, please make sure that you leave your questions in the comments below so that I can answer them on a future Fanco Wrestling Show. I'd really love to hear all of what you guys have to say, whether it's about women's wrestling, men's wrestling, freestyle, folk style. Leave it all in the comments below and I'll get around to answering it. So, first of all, this question comes in two parts. About the rise of women's wrestling. Has there been a rise? What is the rise? And then how does it become an NCAA sport? So let's talk about the rise first. First part, the rise. There has been a rise, a massive rise since the 1990s. In the 1990s, there were about 800 women who were wrestling in the United States. And today there's over 16,000 women wrestlers in the United States at all levels. 800 to 16,000. That's big jump. Women's wrestling is arguably growing more than men's wrestling just because of how many women are getting into it. There are 14 states that have a state championship at high school, including Alaska, Arizona, Texas, Tennessee, Hawaii, Washington. The list goes on a little bit to 14 schools adding high school wrestling. Right now, I'm from Pennsylvania. There's no girls state wrestling championships in Pennsylvania. The girls can wrestle at the guys state wrestling championships, but they don't have their own league like they do in Texas. Now, colleges. There are 46 programs in college right now that have college wrestling programs and 14 being added. Now you ask, well, there are 46 colleges, but isn't that NCAA? No. So let me explain this. So there's actually like a different league, not NCAA. It's the WCWA, Women's College Wrestling Association, and the NCAA, National College Women's National College Wrestling Association. I'll get to those in a little bit, where women's have their own league. So there's actually only one D1 program that has a women's college wrestling program, and that's Presbyterian, which is actually a school being added to D1, and they have a women's college wrestling program. There are 13 D2 schools, 10 D3 schools, and 31 NAIA schools. The new school to be added is Augsburg. You may have seen that in the news recently. Augsburg University, they're a D3 school. They added a women's wrestling program. So it's been growing for sure. And there was actually interest a couple years ago where a bunch of different colleges said that like they wanted a women's wrestling program. They had interest in it. And actually Tom Brands even said that he would fully support a women's wrestling program at the University of Iowa. That hasn't happened yet, but there's that. Another big D1 school that had a commitment is Arizona State. They say that they want to start a Division I women's wrestling program. So now I mentioned the women's league. How do the women get their own NCAA tournament? Just like the men, it's a boys and girls, men's, women's national wrestling championships, women's national wrestling championships. How do women get their own league? So first of all, because those leagues aren't official right now, and it is actually freestyle only, the WCWA, and there are 10 weight classes. The NWCA actually has a 16-team dual meet at the end of the season, which I really wish that there was a dual meet in the actual college wrestling league, NCAA, where you see Penn State, Oklahoma State, Iowa go at it, but that's neither here nor there. But what does it come to become an NCAA sport? So there need to be so many programs that have a D1, D2, D3 sport. So there need to be 20 varsity programs that are wrestling to actually be classified as an emerging sport. And then over the next 10 years, that will actually become a league where they can have their own NCAA wrestling championships, where you need 40 teams to actually compete in the championships, 40 teams that are eligible to compete. They don't all have to compete there, but That's what it is. Now, the interesting thing is, which I found, is it doesn't have to be 20 or 40 D1 programs. It can be 40 programs in general, D1, D2, and D3. This actually happens in sports like beach volleyball, where they have programs that are at all different divisions that compete at the same level, at the same national championship, which I thought was pretty darn cool. Now, what's interesting is the women's wrestling actually has more numbers of, there are more women wrestlers than there are in even a lot of these other college sports like crew and row and like trap and skeet that have college programs. There just aren't many colleges that are picking up women's wrestling. And, you know, I really wonder why. I think that over the next couple of years, you know, it's not going to be something that happens overnight, okay? It's just not. First of all, it's difficult enough to choose to pick up a new sports program in general, but then to start a whole new league, essentially, it's not an easy undertaking. You have programs like Wrestle Like a Girl who are very, very much promoting the sport of women's wrestling, and I think could do, or is doing wonders for the sport of women's wrestling. And I think that, you know, you ask the question, will women's wrestling become an NCAA sport in the future? And my answer to that is, without a doubt, unequivocally, yes. Will it be in 2020? No. Will it be in 2025? Probably not. 2030? Okay, now we're looking more likely to have a women's national wrestling championships. And I think it'll be really cool to see where the sport goes in the future. And if you are a women's wrestler right now, if you're wrestling high school, college, international, whatever you're wrestling, please let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to think about this. And if you're not a girl, you're a guy, let me know if you're interested in seeing this type of sport emerge. It's pretty awesome to see these type of things and really enlarging the wrestling community.